Hey everyone, welcome to a new video, welcome to Floating in Dreams. Today we are going to be talking about my favorite eyeshadow palette. If I were to create my favorite eyeshadow palette, what would it look like? Let's get started. Welcome if you're new here, welcome if you're a returning visitor. Thank you so very much for joining me today. And yes, in today's video I'm going to be chatting to you about my perfect eyeshadow palette, and I'm refilming this bit, so if I look differently than from the first start of this video, that's because I forgot to mention something in my original intro, and that is because I have to announce that this video is a collab with the dearest Erica CONGER, and she has been a lovely subscriber of mine who's been leaving the sweetest comments, and then I found out she had a channel, and she is currently the queen of doing collabs. So when I was playing around with ideas for this palette week, I thought that I could also invite someone to do a video with me. This is my first collab ever, and I'm so happy to be able to do it with Erica, because she is just so lovely. Her content is really great. She shares a lot of personal stories, how she got her start on YouTube, what she likes to do outside of YouTube. She just chats a lot and does the most amazing makeup looks with a lot of brands that I have never even tried. So yeah, I really enjoy her content. She has an amazing eyeshadow palette collection. So when I came up with this idea to redo my video where I created a My Perfect palette, because I did this kind of video a couple of years ago, but I wasn't too happy with the lighting situation in that video, and I also wasn't too happy with, well, some of the selections, because my tastes have definitely changed, and I was just also really curious what Erica would come up with if we were to do this video together. So yeah, make sure to check out Erica below. I will make sure to leave her her YouTube channel linked in the description box so that you can check her out and check out some of her videos. I really enjoy watching some smaller creators as well myself, and she's definitely one of my favorites, so shout out to Erica. And if you're new here and this is the first video of mine that you're watching, maybe you've come from Erica's channel, that would be lovely, then just know that I chat a lot about eyeshadow palettes. We're in the midst of eyeshadow palette week as we're chatting, and I like doing Essence and Catrice videos as well. There's a new limited edition collection that I did order myself, so you can expect a video with that for sure. But I also love getting the use out of my makeup for sure. So that's definitely the focus here. I'm not really focusing on the newest of the new, but I like going back to old things. And I have quite outspoken tastes when it comes to makeup, and just recently I filmed a video where I chatted about my thoughts about new makeup releases, and a lot of the things that are being released just don't really appeal to me. And I think if you see my selection for what I've got going on in my perfect eyeshadow palette, that you can understand why I don't really like a lot of the things that have been announced in recent weeks, months, because I just really like cool tones. I have a neutral undertone myself that leans a bit more cool toned. I have a fair skin tone, and I am not someone who does a lot of makeup for like really creative Instagram posts. It just doesn't really go with my eye shape, so I'm kind of stuck with what I've got going on. And also in my day-to-day life, I do work as a teacher and I wear makeup to work, and that's sort of the kind of makeup that I do. So it's much more geared towards everyday use. And that's also how I have decided to sort of build my palette. So let me get to explaining what this palette is all about. We are first going to chat about how I would set up the palette, so what the packaging would look like, how many pans you're getting, what the color story is roughly going to be like, and then we're really going to zoom in on the different formulas and textures and shades, especially the shades, that I would like to put in this palette if a brand would approach me to ask, would you like to make your perfect eyeshadow palette with us? Then this is what I would do. So before we get into the actual color story and the colors I have selected, I mean, I think that color story wise, there's going to be no surprise here if you're an OG follower, but the way I would want to set up this palette is going to be different from the first time I did this. So I think the first time I did this, I wanted it to be a 15 pan, and a little bit like the Nabla Secret palette, where it's like a cardboard palette with like smaller pans. I still like smaller pans. That's still my preference over like really big ones. I mean, it's very difficult to use up an eyeshadow unless you're a makeup artist and you go back to certain shades all the time. I don't need my pans to be like gigantic. So it would be smaller pans, and these style of palette that I think is really clever, especially for what I would like to do, is the Patrick Major Dimension eyeshadow palette layout. So I'll pop a picture of what that looks like over here. So I think that palette is 12 pans, but it has a flap for some creamy bases that you can use with the rest of the palette. And I actually really like and enjoy pairing like more textured shadows, so like cream to powder sort of formulas, something like a Colourpop Super Shock. So I thought, wouldn't it be fun if we had a couple of like really cool textured shades under this little flap that have a slightly different formula to a powder, that if you get fallout, it doesn't fall in. And then, like the Patrick Ta, have it be this rectangular palette, but then have it make into a 16 pan, and then make it as slim as a Zoeva palette. Does that make sense? So think Patrick Ta, 16 pans with a little flap, but as skinny as a Zoeva palette. That's what I would want. That's what I would want. So easy to store, easy to carry around, small pans that are square so that it's easy to dip your brush in, but you don't need a lot of product, and you just have a couple of fun things to play around with. Now, the other way I would want to lay this out is that apart from the shades underneath the flap, those are going to be shimmers, I would want all shimmers across the top and then all mattes across the bottom for the powder shadows. And the color story is of course going to be cool toned because I love cool tones, and I would want to make it a mix of some neutral like taupey shades with some navy and teals and some purples. That's the way this palette would be laid out. And then the way I'd want it to go is to put all the shimmers and all the mattes from light to dark in this palette. So first all the neutral shimmers, and then the purple shimmers, for instance, and then the navy and the teal shimmer, because I believe those are the darkest ones. And the same thing across the bottom, to have your lighter neutrals to dark first, and then the purples, and then the navies and the teals. That's the way I think I would want to lay this out. So there's going to be 2 topper shades. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 neutrals, 4 purples, and 4 teals and navies. So let me talk to you about the shades. So in order to create this palette, I had to pull eyeshadow from all over my collection. There are singles here, there are palettes here, there are some Colourpop Super Shocks here. Like, I've gone all over the place. So I'm going to talk to you about each shade individually, do the little overlays, and then after I've talked about a certain section. So we're first going to talk about the toppers and the neutrals, and then we'll talk about the purples, navies, and teals, and then I'll show you some like an image of how it all comes together as well. So hopefully you get an idea. So the 2 topper shades I want to put in here, they need to have this like Super Shock kind of formula. That's what I would be looking for, is a Colourpop Super Shock like Frog. This is one of my favorite shades I have found to top over other shades. This is a very sheer, very iridescent eyeshadow, and it's got a little bit of like a cool bluish silvery kind of flip, and I have found this works marvelously well if you tap it over a matte taupe. So the way I had envisioned this is if you just put a matte taupe all over the lid, and then you know, maybe put a lighter one in the crease and like a deeper one all over the lid, you top this off and you have a very easy everyday eye look. That's the way I had envisioned this, but this can work really well as an inner corner highlight with all of these different eyeshadows that we've got going on. Whether you're doing an all neutral look, it's going to be able to transform a look very easily as well. And that is something that I have found where my makeup preferences have skewed towards. I don't just want a matte and a shimmer. I actually want something that's going to give a little bit more texture to the eye, not necessarily very foily or glittery or like an actual texture that you need to stick down, but just that little extra oomph that is going to take your eyeshadow to the next level. And I feel that something like Frog can definitely do that. The other eyeshadow that I would want under the flap, this is in a powder formula, but I would want it to have that Super Shock cream to powder formula, but in this kind of shade. And this is Lucid Lavender from Touch of Glam. This is a really pretty pastel multi-chrome, so where the other one from Colourpop, like Frog, is a very iridescent sparkly shade, I feel that this is more of a multi-chrome. So again, to give you a little bit of dimension, this also has quite a sheer base. I love how this shade can be topped over other things, but it can be worn by itself a lot more easily than Frog can. So if you put this on bare skin, the effect will be a lot lighter, but it's also a great shade that you can top over navies and over purples. I actually had this in my custom eyeshadow palette in March. I'm building myself a custom eyeshadow palette every single month now, and this shade was in last month's palette, and I used it to top over these darker shades, and then it can really add a lot of dimension to these really deep shades. Something like Frog, I wouldn't put over a very dark shade because I feel you just get the sparkle and you don't really get the shade. So this is better topped over some of the like lighter taupey mattes, but this is the one that you can really use to transform the navies and the purples that I'm putting in this palette to really give it something extra. You can also very easily pop this in the center of the lid to do a bit of an halo eye. It's a great inner corner highlight as well. This is going to be your multitasker to just add that extra oomph and texture to your looks, but I want this to be in a different formula. So I'm going to talk to you about the neutral mattes first. The lightest matte that I would want to put in here is one of my favorite matte taupes. It's from the Pretty Cool from Dose of Colors, and this is the shade Fine Print from the Pretty Cool. It's a taupe, but it has quite a lot of gray, and even, especially compared to these warmer tones, you can see that it has a little bit of a green flip to it. Like, not a flip, it's got a little bit of green mixed in, making it a little bit more cool toned, and I think that it can complement some of the other shades really well. I think it will go really well with something like Frog. So Fine Print from the Dose of Colors Pretty Cool would be the lightest matte taupe that I would put in here. Now, I also wanted to make sure there was a medium matte taupe in here. And the reason why I love taupes so much is because it's between a gray and a brown. So depending on what you pair it with, it can pull either way. And you'll see in the shimmer options that there, again, not only have I gone from light to dark, but I also have selected a couple of taupes with slightly different undertones so that these can all go together also with the navies and the purples that I've got going on in the palette, at least in theory, that's the idea. And the medium taupe that I would want to put in here for a matte is the Pat McGrath taupe that you get in the Subliminal one. I'm not even sure what this is called. There's a card somewhere. But yeah, this matte taupe here can be built up, it can be sheared out. Again, that's the kind of taupe I had envisioned you can use to layer underneath something like Frog and really get this really pretty everyday shade. You could potentially just use that one shade, just buff it all over the lid, put Frog all over it, and you'd be good to go. But you can also then use something like Fine Print to blend out that shade again. So that's an option then that you would have. And then for the deepest matte, because I want to make sure that you are able to create some dimension here, that you have shades you can use as liners or that you can really use to deepen out an outer V if that's what you like to do with your makeup. I want this to be a very versatile palette and not have it be too light, but still light enough that a lot of people can get away with it. So the shade that I thought we could use to really make things nice and deep is this dark brown from the Natasha Denona Glam palette. It's a cool toned, very charcoal leaning brown that has a lot of gray running through it, but I think it's a great shade to do like a neutral smoky eye with if you'd like to. So one of the shimmers that I have for you all over the lid, maybe a pop of the brighter shimmer on top of it, or use one of those topper shades to create a little bit of extra dimension, to add a bit of a flip, to add a bit of interest, but you can keep things nice and interesting or nice and basic with these three matte shades for sure. And then for neutral shimmers, I wanted to also give you 3 shimmers. So from the Fawn palette from Meesha Lou, I wanted to put in this shade right here. This is the shade Water Reflection. And I almost went with Sydney Grace's Tiara. That's a similar concept to this, where it's a very, very intense, very shiny taupe shimmer. But this, I feel, has a little bit more warmth to it almost. So it's like a warmish, like almost pinky taupe that I think can work really well as a neutral. So if you want to go for that very like highlightery neutral look with like a very vibrant shimmer all over the lid, this is really, really stunning for that. But I think this can work really well with the purples and the blues in this palette as well. So if you just want to use one of the matte navies, for instance, and then put this with it, I think it's going to work really well. So Water Reflection from Meesha Lou is going to be the lightest neutral shimmer. And then because I really wanted to make sure we had some of those green tone taupes in, a palette that I feel does green tone taupes really well is the Mary Jane from Melt. And they do this stunning, really, really stunning green tone taupe in a shimmer called Sweet Lily in the Mary Jane. You can tell from like, this is the only shade that has a bit of a dent even. I was umming and ahhing between that and Santa Maria, but Santa Maria would pull it more into a gray toned vibe, and I'm not a huge fan of gray tones on myself. I think they can be a little lackluster and you just don't get as much versatility out of it. Now formula wise, I would want to make this more of like a metallic shimmer. This very flaky formula is not my favorite, even though I have no issues working with this palette at all. But this Sweet Lucy shade I think is going to be really nice if you have a shade like that, and combine it with the pretty cool fine print shade, because that also has a greener undertone. So I think those two shades can nicely complement each other. And then you have the Natasha Denona, which is more of like a neutral cool tone brown that can really nicely deepen things up. So that can be your like more glammed up version. So I wanted to make sure you could do something very basic, something neutral every day, do something glam, and do something smoky. And that's where the last shimmer comes in. And the last shimmer I want to mention here is Frosted Morning from Sydney Grace. This is a really stunning, deeper taupe neutral shade that can be smoky, and even this, like, this formula is really great because you can fluff it into the crease if you'd like to. So this with the Natasha Denona Glam shade, I think can make for a neutral smoky eye. Or if you pair this with the Water Reflection shade from Meesha Lou, I think you can do a halo eye with this quite easily. This can be a great shade to set up something like a cut crease if that's what you're into. And this is another shade where I feel if you were to pair it with the two toppers, it's going to add a little bit extra to those toppery shades. So layering those toppers over this is going to give you a little slightly different quality again. So this can be the versatile shade that really ties everything together. Again, a shade that will go with the purples and with the navies that are in here. I think that this is the shade that ties the entire palette together for me. So if you would like to see what these like neutral shades and topper shades look like all together, I'll now pop something up on the screen so you can see how it all comes together. I don't think my camera is really picking up on the pretty shifts that the Frog shade and also Lucid Lavender have here. But yeah, that's a bit of a shame, and that's due to my camera just not really cooperating. But we still have a second half to this palette, which are the blues and the purples, because I always find that we get a neutral palette that's like 15 shades, and then you get like, what, 2 colorful shades? And I want a neutral palette that I can do neutral looks with, but that will also allow me to do colorful looks. So I wish we got more palettes that had like this 50-50 split between neutrals and colorful shades, and then a couple of things that can like bridge the gap between them. So I can use the neutrals with the colorful shades if I would like to, because even though I like doing like a full-on navy smoky eye, that's like one of my favorite looks to do on myself, that's very intense. For every day, I like being able to pull in neutrals and do like a neutral look with a pop of blue on the lower lash line. That's such a good basic to go to and still have a bit of interest. But that's why I've selected 4 navy and teals and 4 purpley shades for you. I think in the swatches, I swatched the blue tones first. So we're gonna talk about the blue tones first. So for the blues, I have a navy shimmer and a navy matte, and then I have a teal shimmer and a teal matte, to sort of be able to do a full-on navy look if you'd want to, and then for instance use some of the taupey shades to blend it out, make it a bit more wearable. But also if you were to combine them all together, you can really intensify things and make them go together. So one of my favorite navy shimmers that has been released in recent years is from the Lunar Beauty Eternal Eclipse, and it's this shade right here called Deep Sea. So I would want that as my navy shimmer. The reason why I didn't go with something more vibrant is because this has a very grungy, murky undertone. And I like a bit of grungy, guys. That's what I like the best. And because this has quite a deep, dark, grayish black base, I think it's going to work better with some of the taupey shades. So for instance, if you just do a very basic taupe setup and then pop this all over the lid, you can still make this shade a little bit more wearable and you don't have to go full on navy. So I felt that this was a bit more versatile than a full on, like very vibrant navy like you get in the bubblegum, because there is something in here as well. So these like really vibrant blues, I like those, but I wanted things to be grungy and dark and murky and cool toned and yummy saturated, and that's why I went with this shade. And just because I always wanted to have that option to be able to do a navy smoky eye, I knew I had to throw in a really good saturated dark navy matte that leans very black. And in this palette, this is the Niebieski. I'm not sure, I'm butchering. I don't know any Polish, people. Correct me in the comments down below because I don't know how to pronounce this, but I did look it up on Google Translate, and Niebieski is apparently Polish for blue, and it's a blue tone palette. But that blue matte, wowza. It's so stunning. It's really intense. It's one of those shades where you just dip your brush in and that's all you'll need. But this is going to be a great shade to add more dimension. You could do a full-on taupe look and put this in like a cat eye shape in your outer corner. And rather than a black, I would go for a navy every single time. But if you were to pair it with the Lunar Beauty, put this all over the lid and like fluff it into the crease, and then topping that shimmer from the Lunar Beauty all over it, and you have your perfect navy smoky eye. Really, with a smoky eye, all you need is 2 shades, really. Again, use Frog or the Lucid Lavender shade if you want to add some more dimension. I really think that Lucid Lavender together with these 2 navy shades is going to make for a really, really pretty addition as well. So lots of options here, and the navy matte from the Glamshop Niebieski palette is perfect for that navy smoky eye that I love so much. But then we need to talk teals because I love teals, and in the bubblegum from BH Cosmetics, we get this really, really stunning, lovely teal shimmer. This is so great, and you'll see when I have everything swatched side by side that this, even though it's like another dark shimmer, it's different from the Eternal Eclipse shade because this has definitely more of a green undertone, whereas the Eternal Eclipse is more of a blue. This definitely has a little bit of a brown quality to it as well, and I love mixing teals and taupes. Like, teals and taupes go so well together. So the teal shimmer from the bubblegum is definitely a shade I have to put in this palette. It's so stunning. It's one of my favorite teal shimmers I have now in my collection. This is the only, like, these 2 shades, the teal shades, I think are the only ones that won't go very well with the toppers, because the toppers have a very clear either blue or more purple leaning quality to it, and these definitely have a little bit more green in them. But that's why I gave you a couple of green tone taupes, because those green tone taupes, like the shimmer from the Mary Jane, could again pull this into a more neutral direction as well. And then for a teal matte, I wanted to put in another Sydney Gray shade, and this is the shade called Thrilled. And Thrilled is, I think, one of the best teal murky shades I have in my entire collection. Very often brands will say that something is a teal, but then I very often feel it's more of a turquoise because it's very bright. And I don't love very bright shades. I like them to be murky and grungy. So in order to be able to do a full-on teal murky look, perhaps with a bit of taupe to make it a bit more wearable, then Thrilled, I think, is going to be the shade you need to really round out the palette. So Thrilled from Sydney Grace is going to be the other teal I'm going to give you that is a matte. So the way I envision it is that they're like together in the palette, like with the shimmer at the top and then the teal. That's the plan. That's the way I've planned it out. So let me go into the purples of this palette. And for the purples, because in the navy section, I didn't really give another like light shimmer, I wanted to give you another light shimmer that I think can, again, work with the taupes in this palette, but that you can also complement with Frog or the Lucid Lavender shade. And one of my favorite, very light purple tone shimmers is in the Viseart Violette Étendue. This shade over here, I'm not sure what it's called because Viseart doesn't put the shade names on the palette itself, but this is like a dirty lilac taupey neutral shimmer. It's very intense. It's like a more purpley toned version of Water Reflection, really. And I think if you put them side by side, then you can really see that the Water Reflection shade is a bit more warm toned and this is a little bit more cool toned. So again, giving you options there. You can pull this in with the navies. You can pull this shade in with the taupes. Again, just to add a little bit differently if you were so inclined. And this is just one of my favorite shades in my entire makeup collection. So you knew I had to feature it here. And just because I'm so enjoying having shimmers and like textures in palettes and have something that has a bit more of a flip, I thought we could do another multi-chrome in this palette. This is Clionadh Regal, and I believe it's one of their glitter multi-chromes. Does it say on the back? Glitter type vibrant multi-chrome. That's what it's called. And this is like the amped up version of Lucid Lavender. So I feel that those two can play off each other really well because this is not just a purple shimmer. It does have a little bit more of a flip, making it go with the purples I have selected really well. But this with the navies or with the teals, I think is going to work really well too. I'm not sure if you, again, can see it. It is purple in its base. It's like a lavender base, but this has a lot more blue and green running through it than the Lucid Lavender shade does. So for me, Regal I thought was a no-brainer because it can go so well with a lot of different shades. And it's again a shade that will work really well with the taupey neutrals too. And then of course we need some purple toned mattes. Now I didn't want to go like full on bright purple here. Again, I wanted it to be like a little murky, a little grungy, and I thought what better shade than to select Rock Hopper from the Club Nebula from Kaleidos Cosmetics that they did together with Angelica Nukvist. I'm talking about this shade here. This gray toned mauve tone that you get in here. This is so stunning. It's this perfect grungy like crease shade. Again, will go really perfectly with some of the taupes if you want to make that a little bit more neutral toned. And this is going to pair so well with that Viseart shimmer I just showed you if you want to go for a neutral eye that has a purple undertone that is very cool toned. I think that can work really, really well. So it's purple, but it's nothing too offensive and in your face. It's more of a grungy vibe, and I think this shade can work really well as a blend shade, for instance, for the navy shimmer in here, as well as some of the teals. I think because it has such a great undertone, it can work with a lot of different shades. Finally, from the Beauty Bay Voodoo palette, I also wanted to make sure there was something like a true purple in here. And this is a cool tone purple that I think works best from everything I have in my collection. So a matte, deeper, grungy, but full-on purple shade, so that if you want to go for that purple look, it will work. Topping Lucid Lavender over this is going to be like a dream come true, I can just tell. Because it's not very blue toned, it's definitely like a true purple, but it isn't too bright. It's still very murky, very smoky. Again, you could do a smoky purple eye with this if you'd like to. So I feel that with that shade, again, you just have a lot of options, either to do like a neutral look with like a pop of purple on the lower lash line. That's what this is going to do for you. You can use this to create a halo eye, cut creases. Like there's a lot of things you can do with this. Or you can just like do a smoked out like cat eye with this, use it as liner. Options, people, options. That's what I'm all about. I want things to be versatile, but still wearable. So now I will show you what all of these colorful shades look like if we swatch them together. And then if I can somehow manage it, I'll make sure I have a little collage of how all the shades look together in like one little overview as well, because I think that will be helpful. So the way I have this in my brain, it's 16 shades, and this, like if this existed, I wouldn't need any more eyeshadow in my life. I really wouldn't. I love taupes, I love navies, I love purples, I love teals. And there is currently nothing on the market that combines all of these things in one go. So yeah, this would be my perfect palette. It's not on the market. Someone please come out of it. Contact me and I'll help you out to create a perfect eyeshadow palette. Let me know in a comment down below what your perfect palette would look like. I would be very curious to know. Do we have similar tastes? Who knows? But this is what I would create if I was given free reign and, you know, the sky was the limit. That's definitely what I would create. So thank you very much for watching today's video. Give the video a thumbs up if you liked it. Sadly, we're almost done with eyeshadow palette week by the time you're watching this. I only have one more video left for you, but normally I do post 3 videos a week anyway, so I've got lots more content coming your way. So I hope you'd like to stay tuned for now, and I hope to see you in my next video. Take care, everybody. Have a good day. Bye-bye.